Carole Charnow and I are going to do this talk together. Carole Charnow was appointed president and CEO of the Boston Children's Museum in the summer of 2010. The best decision the search committee ever made. A performing arts producer, director, and nonprofit arts leader for over 30 years, she brings creativity, vision, and a commitment to social change to the museum. We're going to talk to you now about the importance of play. We're going to explain 4 major points that build on what you heard earlier this morning and hopefully will set the stage for this afternoon's breakout sessions. First, play is brain building and can be important to helping caregivers and infants buffer toxic stress. Play is fun, but it is certainly not frivolous. Second, play facilitates the normal developmental progression from dependence to independence and from parental regulation to self-regulation. It promotes a sense of agency in the child. Social play is thought to be important practice for the development of executive function skills, which, as we have heard, are critical to later academic and adult success. Third, preschool curricula must emphasize informal, play-based learning, and by this we mean social-emotional learning, rather than formal academic instruction. Studies of such curriculum as tools of the mind have shown positive effects on both executive function and academic skills in 5-year-olds. And children's museums can be an important resource where parents can learn and experience the value of play in young children. Fourth, adult success and future economic competitiveness of our workforce will be enhanced by the very competencies play enhances: creativity, problem solving, teamwork, and leadership. Now, although scientists may argue about the exact definition of play, all agree that it is enjoyable, has no extrinsic goals, is voluntary, and involves active engagement by the child. The importance of play has been described as fundamental to health, is part of our evolutionary heritage, and gives us skills to live in a complex world. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child has included a child's right to engage in play appropriate to the age of the child as part of its convention. As I mentioned, play is brain building. Play is the serious business of childhood and provides the foundation for the development of the all-important executive function skills which we heard so much about earlier this morning. To review, executive function skills are part of our fluid intelligence, in contrast to general intelligence measured on standard IQ tests. In other words, the how we learn, the skills and attitudes, rather than the content, the what we learn. Executive function allows us to filter distractions and gain self-control. It allows mental flexibility. It allows children to switch gears. We're all familiar with trying to get your child off to school and get dressed when they're trying to play with crayons. It's our working memory. Now, the development of these schools is directly related to brain development in the prefrontal cortex. Oh, well, so much for my laser. Executive function skills, and here we're talking about a balance between the prefrontal cortex on the left and the amygdala on the right, which is central to toxic stress and stress modulation. Executive function skills help balance and modulate impulsivity and emotionality in the amygdala, all accentuated by toxic stress. Both the development of neurons, of synapses, a pruning, as we heard, the mechanism by which extra brain cells and synapses disappear if they're not used, of neuroplasticity, and of the epigenetic effects on the human genome are all now well understood to be dependent on early experience and not solely determined by our biology. Our recent enhanced understanding of brain development in young children makes it very clear why it is easier, more efficient, and less costly to get it right from the start, to see that our brains are wired optimally from the beginning and don't need major repair. We now understand that these executive function skills are foundational for school readiness and academic success. Bringing these innovative ideas to scale involves a refocus of our thinking about early education. The goal is not to exclusively emphasize a model of enrichment to compensate for deprivation in impoverished environments, nor is it to support a model of overstimulation and overscheduling in resource-rich environments. Instead, I think we want to support interventions that cultivate executive function skills in all children. So how does play develop? Think of this construct. The human infant is born immature compared to other species, and substantial learning from parents can take place in an environment free from predators, which allows for more brain development. Early on, the infant is entirely dependent on parents to regulate sleep-wake rhythms, feeding cycles, and social interactions. As the child develops, he or she becomes increasingly independent and able to self-regulate. In the first 3 months of life, the earliest parent-infant play is known as attunement. Parents, both mothers and fathers, but not strangers, can interact reciprocally with their infants, reading the infant's nonverbal cues to learn about turn-taking, the basis of pragmatic language development. This brief split-screen video, clipped from my own research years ago, shows a 3-month-old playing, enter, or just the screen? Okay.
There we go.
Oh, there we go. Great.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. A verbal reciprocal game with his mother.
Some more? Oh. Oh. Good. Yeah. Yeah. Oh. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Ooh, some more. Oh.
During activities such as these, the right brain of the mother and infant are attuned to each other, and analyses of physiological heart rate rhythms of infants with both mothers and fathers show synchrony. By 9 months of age, the mutual regulation can be seen in how infants use their mothers for social referencing. The next slide illustrates the classic visual cliff experiment, in which the infant crawls across the plexiglass visual cliff only if the mother encourages the infant, but not if she frowns. By 12 months of age, the child's experiences are helping to lay the foundation for the ongoing development of executive function skills. The expression on a child's face of true joy and mastery when they take their first step is truly a magical moment that all parents remember. During the second year, as toddlers learn to explore the world around and develop the beginnings of self-awareness, they use their parents as a home base, much as a tetherball, checking to be sure that the world they are exploring is safe. As children become independent, their ability to self-regulate becomes apparent. They can focus their attention and solve problems efficiently. They are less impulsive and can better manage stress and strong emotions. They can reflect on how they should respond rather than purely reacting impulsively. It is not hard to imagine the adverse consequences of poor self-regulation: preschool expulsion, high rates of psychotropic medication, and disruptive classroom behavior even in kindergarten and preschool. It is important to note that play is universal across all species in the animal kingdom, even when it puts them at the risk of predation. It is not only universal, but may be essential for healthy brain development. Rats deprived of play as pups, not only were less competent at problem solving later on, negotiating mazes, but the medial prefrontal cortex of the play-deprived rats was significantly more immature, suggesting that play deprivation interfered with normal pruning and brain development in the prefrontal cortex. Play can be categorized in a variety of ways, but the following slide exemplifies one classification by Stuart Brown, head of the National Institute of Play. Attunement, which we already talked about, hands-on play, playing with toys and objects, physical rough and tumble play, imaginary play and storytelling, and guided play. Guided play becomes particularly important to understand as children become more active, especially in groups of children, and ideally includes a principle called scaffolding, which we heard about earlier. Scaffolding is the term you will hear more about this afternoon as part of guided play, and it suggests that caregivers need to provide the appropriate amount of input and guidance for children to develop optimal problem-solving skills. This slide shows the bell-shaped curve that illustrates in the middle the optimal zone of arousal and stress for this kind of complex learning, which is quite different from the linear curve of learning what to be afraid of, namely the greater the threat, the quicker you flee. The trick here for caregivers is to find each child's zone of being challenged but not frustrated and providing increasing complexity of skills step by step. Equally important is the research currently underway in the Boston Children's Museum by MIT's Laura Schultz and her colleagues, and by a wonderful researcher, Alison Gopnik in California. They have shown that if a caregiver instructs a child in how a toy works, the child is less likely to discover other attributes of the toy than if the child is left to explore without direct input. Adults who hover and over-direct a child's play can limit the child's independent exploration. These play activities enable children to work in groups, to share, negotiate, develop decision-making skills and problem-solving, and discover their own interests. They learn to resolve conflicts and develop self-advocacy skills, their own sense of agency, as Dr. Earls will talk about this afternoon. Alison Gopnik has a wonderful quote about a 3-year-old's attention and ability to explore. They are like someone in love on their first trip to Paris after 3 cups of espresso. No wonder they wake up at 3 a.m. Specific curricula have now been developed and tested in preschool to develop these skills. This afternoon, one of our breakout sessions will focus on tools of the mind, a curriculum developed in California and used at a preschool in Lexington. Scaffolding in this curriculum is extensively used to support skills such as buddy reading, where children take turns being lips and ears, learning to listen to each other in a focused manner. A growing body of research by Adele Diamond in Vancouver, Clancy Blair at NYU, and others have shown that this curriculum not only improves executive function skills in 5-year-olds, but also enhances academic skills and shows improvement in brain function on functional MRI. As I mentioned, focusing on cultivating executive function skills through playful learning in these early years is an alternative and innovative way of thinking about early childhood education. Instead of focusing solely on academic skills, alphabet, early literacy, flashcards, computer toys, teaching to tests, the so-called drill and kill, which was so overemphasized in the No Child Left Behind legislation, we need to cultivate the joy of learning through play. We also need to avoid the pitfall of overscheduling children. The stressful effects of this approach often result in later anxiety, depression, and lack of creativity. Optimally, these innovative approaches can help children enter school with a stronger foundation for school readiness based on the importance of informal learning and social emotional skills and attitudes that are critical for academic success and for the long-term enjoyment of learning and love of school. Once again, it is easier and less costly to get it right from the start. Now, what are some of the barriers to accomplishing these goals? First of all, our culture is preoccupied with marketing products to parents of young children. Parents of young children who cannot afford expensive toys may feel left out. The reality is that children's creativity and play is enhanced by the least expensive toys: wooden spoons, blocks, crayons, simple available household objects, and parental time spent reading, watching children play, and listening to their children. It is parents and caregivers' presence and attention that enriches children, and one-on-one play is a time-tested way of being fully present. Low-income families may have less time to play with their children, often working 2 jobs to make ends meet. We need to find ways to support and emphasize to all parents the importance of playtime with children. Physical play, safe neighborhood playgrounds, and the universal availability of school recess are also critical and could be the topic of another talk. Museums, libraries, and other centers of informal learning can also help parents to foster a joy of learning in their children. One of the afternoon sessions will describe in greater detail the collaboration of Boston's children's museums and libraries throughout Massachusetts in the Race to the Top grant. Focusing on executive function skills may even help address the growing disparity in educational outcomes between the rich and the poor, but by no means alone can it deal with protecting families from the adverse impact of toxic stress. Now, Carole Charnow is now going to tell you about how play can help develop a creative and innovative workforce and the role children's museums have and continue to play in supporting parents and children to play and learn together.
Thank you. But first, I'm going to say what a magnificent job Michael has done today so far. Can we just have a round of applause? I just have to acknowledge Michael for this amazing vision of creating this summit today and making it the first and most important step of our 100th anniversary. I just wanted to also say how absolutely delighted I am, as I have an 18-year-old son, to learn that executive function continues through 25 years old. That's the big takeaway for me today. And I'm going to be trying to find Jack to find out how I'm going to do that with my kid. Anyways, I did want to just take a minute to connect up for you, and I mean just a minute because we are going to finish on time, to connect up for you how this concept of play connects through children's museums to possibly developing an adult workforce. I don't have all the data, but I know that we are working on that in the informal education sector. So you may not know that every 2 years since 2002, IBM conducts its annual Global CEO Survey. And this survey of business leaders is designed to shed light on the challenges and goals faced by today's CEOs. The 1,500-plus participants come from leading organizations around the world in industry, communication, financial services, and the public sector, from countries as diverse as North America, Latin America, Europe, Japan, and Africa. In 2004 through 2008, the top challenge cited by CEOs from around the world was coping with rapid change. However, in 2010, CEOs cited complexity as the most single significant challenge they face. They described the world as increasingly volatile, uncertain, and complex. And the report states that more CEOs seriously doubted their own ability to cope with this rapidly increasing complexity. Respondents agreed that the new economic environment is structurally and fundamentally different, requiring leaders to discard old business models, old ways of working, and long-held assumptions. They said today's leaders need to be more innovative, willing to make quick decisions, take calculated risks, and find new ideas and ways of leading and communicating. They said in 2010 that creativity was now the most important leadership quality of the 21st century. Creative leaders, they said, invite disruptive innovation, encourage others to drop outdated approaches and take balanced risks. They are open-minded and inventive in expanding their management and communication styles, particularly to engage with a new generation of employees, partners, and customers. Creative leaders, the report says, are comfortable with ambiguity and experimentation. They're radical in their conception and execution. In 2012, the study was repeated again, this time for 1,700 CEOs around the world, and this time they cited creativity, innovation, and collaboration as key skills. These leaders are now seeking to create more open and collaborative cultures in their businesses where employees can innovate, collaborate, and respond to increasingly rapid change. So as a person leading a children's museum who spent most of my career, over 30 years, in the creative arts, these ideas have really struck a chord with me as they resonate with my belief that we do have an innate curiosity, imagination, and creativity, as we've learned earlier this morning. Having spent over 30 years in the performing arts, I've had the honor of working with some of the greatest creative minds of our time. And these artists not only master their technique, but they excel at this open-minded, inventive, collaborative atmosphere of experimentation, radical in their conception and execution, and they thrive in collaborative settings. These are the precise qualities described as necessary to the 21st century, the CEOs expressed in the IBM studies. So if we consider this notion that creativity, collaboration, and innovation are considered by the majority of business leaders as the most important skills of the 21st century, we have to really ask ourselves, are we now developing those future innovators? Are we nurturing these qualities in our schools, in our universities, and in our institutions? And to answer this question, we really need to start thinking about how creativity is born and how it can be nurtured throughout a lifetime. So traditionally, our society segments us into those who are creative and those who are not. There are the great musicians, the actors, the artists and writers who make up the 1% of us, the creatives. And then there are the 99% of the rest of us whose most greatest hope at creative expression is posting our holiday photos on Facebook creatively, and you know how difficult that is. But most of us will remember our earliest creative experiments, playing with the cardboard box, the simple toys, making and flying paper airplanes, drawings, inventing a game, imagining ourselves as a superhero. These experiences not only developed us important skills for us like problem solving, they set us on a path of developing ideas, collaborating with others, and making connections between us and our world. This is something that John mentioned about access to a wider world. All of these skills are part of what makes up creativity, and they all are part of what we understand as play. In its 2012 exhibit in New York, The Century of the Child, the Museum of Modern Art noted that play is to the 21st century what work was to industrialization. It demonstrates a way of knowing, doing, and creating value. In his TED Talk of 2008, with the theme of serious play, designer Tim Brown asserted that play is at the root of creative thinking, that playfulness can help us do our jobs better and find more innovative solutions. Play leads us to be more adaptive, collaborative, spontaneous, and inventive. So this is where children's museums come in. Founded in 1913, Boston Children's Museum is the second oldest children's museum in the world and the first major urban children's museum. It was founded by science teachers who were influenced by John Dewey's principles of progressive educational theory. The idea for children's museums emerged in concert with a new interest in child health and development. Pediatrics was first designated a specialty by the AMA in 1880. U.S. presidents convened national conferences on the welfare of children beginning in 1909. Doctors Arnold Geschel, John Watson, and in the 1940s, Dr. Benjamin Spock published what became highly popular books on child development and child rearing. From the 1960s to the 1980s, Under the leadership of Boston Children's Museum revolutionary leader Michael Spock, who was the son of Dr. Benjamin Spock, we pioneered the development of hands-on, child-centered interactive exhibits and programs, now a model used throughout the world. At Boston Children's Museum, we have the opportunity to demonstrate and persuade parents on the power of play, and we have done so over 100 years with over 25 million visitors. We believe our rich and stimulating environment and nurturing staff can help mitigate and in some cases reverse the effects of toxic stress resulting from poverty and trauma and actually contribute to the brain building that we've been hearing about this morning. Just about every children's museum in the country has in some way benefited from the model and pathway begun in Boston in the 1960s. We're very proud today to have Janet Rice-Ellman here, who is the president of the Association of Children's Museums. And Janet, you can just shout out, how many children's museums are there today in America? About 300. So that is really quite a relevant statistic because this is the fastest growing sector of museums in the country. So it goes to show you how important people are thinking about early childhood play. So as corporate and academic leaders seek to tap into the creativity of their constituencies, this notion of play and its place in the adult world is starting to gain some traction in business circles. The National Institute of Play now offers consulting to companies searching for ways to expand their capacity for innovation. Charles Fidel, a global thought leader on 21st century skills, co-authored a bestseller entitled 21st Century Skills Learning for Life in Our Times, and he's developed a curriculum to teach creativity. And John Seeley Brown and Douglas Thomas have just published an important book, A New Cultural of Learning, Cultivating Imagination for a World of Constant Change. So perhaps we should turn now to children's museums who are both advocates for and experts in play to better understand how to prepare tomorrow's leaders in our increasingly complex world. As we celebrate our 100th anniversary, we have the opportunity to underscore our central role in protecting the integrity of childhood by ensuring that children are allowed to express their innate curiosity in the world and their great capacity for imagination and creativity, and are actively encouraged to experience the joy of discovery through play.
Not quite done. It's a tag team. Pediatricians have an important role to play in letting parents of all income strata know about the importance of play. Our National American Academy of Pediatrics published a clinical report on the importance of play several years ago and has another report in press on the special importance of play for children in poverty, this year's strategic priority for the Academy. I am going to propose that just as we support Reach Out and Read by giving out books to young children, we encourage play for parents and infants right from birth by writing a prescription for play. Play is brain building, and playing every day may keep the doctor away.